3. I'm looking for my magic pen. If you're watching this live, give me a 1 in the comments. Give me a 3 if you're watching this on a replay. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. We recently had our channel hacked, so we're looking for as much support as possible. Looking forward to seeing your comments as well. Recently, I had an incident happen where we had to spend a lot of money on Uber. So let's talk about this. So the title of this is $1,000 Uber. Oh my goodness. So here's what happens. Recently, I was in South Florida. We were doing one of our Beyond First Class Mastermind events with the jet, and we had to use another aircraft to get home, not the jet. And that aircraft was not available. Something happened. The weather was also not cooperating. So we had a choice, my friend and I, my team member, we could spend another night, or we could Uber it home, which we did, and we got home at 3:30 in the morning, and I got started working at 7 o'clock, 3.5 hours later. As I'm looking for ways to get home, I'm calling all my friends up who are pilots, or looking for any favors I can tap in on. And one of my friends, he goes, "Gary, do you realize what's that going to cost you, like $1,000? Because we're going from South Florida to Central Florida." But everybody, when I told them that we'll just go ahead and Uber it, all these ideas came up where everybody would say, "Well, why don't you do this?" And this was, "Why don't you just spend the night? Can somebody pick you up in the morning?" And all these different ideas. But let's look at it this way. I want you to think about this, especially also if you're in sales. This is so, so valuable for you. And this is also how I can get people to spend $45,000 for coaching with me for my inner circle. It's the same principle. You might want to write this down if you have the opportunity. Cost is a concern in the absence of, you probably can't see this too well. I'm running out of ink. Cost is a concern in the absence of value. Cost is a concern in the absence of value. So in this case, the cost was not a concern because there was no absence of value. Now, let's talk about that. All right. So it's value over cost, value over cost. So here's the value that we had. So I had to figure out all the values. So number one, hotel. We would have spent, I don't know, $500 to $600. I would say at least $600 on hotel and food. Maybe the hotels were $400. So with food and so forth, maybe $600. So we didn't have to spend that. Here is the biggest value. Now keep in mind, when you're offering something to a customer, you have a product. If your value is here and the cost is here, they're going to buy. This is why when people come into my inner circle, they'll invest $50,000 because if I offer this much value, then the cost becomes, to some degree, relatively a lot less, not as much of a concern. So we've got the hotel. All right. The next thing, the more important thing, was my team member. He's got a family. So now if we left the next day, he's going to no longer have another night, if you will, at home with his family. So family time. We put a lot of value on that. I was already awake at 12 o'clock at night or whatever it is, so I may as well just jump in the Uber and get going. So then not only for time with his family would have been lost, then there was my time. I would have less time to work, whatever. All these things are taken into consideration. This, to me, had more value than, here's the value, had way more value than the cost of the Uber. That's why I made it so small. So always remember, cost is a concern in the absence of value. So all the people that were giving me suggestions, well, why don't you just wait another night, or why don't you wait till the airplane is this, or the weather clears out, or this is that. One thing they're not realizing is, wait a minute, why would you make a decision to spend so much money on Uber? The reason is they're not stopping to think, well, Gary, what would be the value of you spending so much money on Uber and not staying there? So it was more important for me not to spend another night in a hotel. It was more important for me to get my team member back to his family. It was more important for me to get to the office the next day so I can get cracking and get moving. All these things became a lot higher in value to me than the cost. You'll hear people say that successful people focus on the value, not the cost. That is true to some degree. I would say all people who are very successful do this. I know some people who are successful financially, they're still cheap. They don't get this. But when you value your time, you will understand that you will do things differently, and you'll also work smarter than harder because you value your time. And that's one of the reasons I'm heavy into aviation, because sometimes it's more valuable to me to spend $3,000 an hour or $1,000 an hour on my airplane than driving a car. Now, we could have saved a lot less money using Uber. We could have walked. I'm being a little silly, but yes, could we have? Yeah, we could have walked. We could have rode a bicycle. We could have maybe rented a car. Why did I not rent a car? Because I didn't want the hassle of figuring out where I got to go get a car. I might have to go to Uber to go get a car. Then I've got to figure out I've got to deliver the car when I get back. That's going to eat up more of my time. I want you to be thinking about, for those of you especially who are in business, the mindset you want to have is, if you don't make a sale, what was it that you did not offer a high enough value that did not suppress the cost? When the value of what you do and offer suppresses the cost, then people will come and spend more, or you will get more clients. And you're constantly have to be focusing on, and I strongly suggest you do this, you want to constantly focus on what is the added value that I can offer my clients. So as unusual as this sounds, people think I would be comparing the hotel price to the price of the Uber. That was part of the value concept here, but the biggest trade-off was actually these last two things, and there were more things as well. Not to mention the fact that I was able to use an Uber. I didn't have to think. So while I was being driven by somebody driving Uber, I was doing work. So I'm doing two things at the same time. Anyway, just want you to think about that. In your comments, I want you to write value over cost. Value over cost. Why did you buy a car, not a bicycle, to get around? For those of you who've bought a car, not a bicycle, because you have value in what that car does for you. That car will get you to a location or a point further than walking. That car will get you to a location quicker than riding a bicycle. Now, for some people who are like in New York, there is no value for a car because New York is so congested and so small, it's cheaper for them to take the train, the subway, or an Uber. Value over cost. Cost is a concern in the absence of value. Okie dokie, I don't want you to forget that. That's good stuff. And when you position yourself in certain things in your life, if you focus more on value than cost, I tell you what, you won't be penny pinching and you won't be scrimping about, I want to do this and want to do that. I feel that when you focus on value and you value your time, and I watch people and I see how much they value their time. And I was very blessed when I was younger to be mentored by two millionaires and later a billionaire. And when I watch how they value time, especially my billionaire mentor, mind-boggling. And then a lot of people have the argument, well, he's a billionaire, he can afford to do all this. Most billionaires don't start off as billionaires. So there's things that you can do right now, whether you want to be more successful financially or not, but there's things that you can do right now that you would pay for your time and you would value it more and you would also accomplish more in the long run. Anyway, I'm out of here. Hope you've enjoyed today's video. Love to see your comments below. Definitely comment value over cost. I'm out of here between now and the next time we get the chat. You know what to do, and if this is the first time watching, you will now. Don't let others rent space in your head.